Well, I hope you are willing to kind of play a little game with me, if you will, because I want to talk a little bit about reading and annotations. And so you'll notice you're actually taking a look at my iPad screen. This is where I do about 90% of my work. And that handsome guy in the background there with the blue eyes, that's my son Sam, my middle son, although he is much, well, not much, but he is significantly older now than that picture, but I just love that picture. Um, so we've now had a couple of weeks where you've put in a summary, and so I want to give you a little bit of a taste of how I approach difficult readings, and so I'm going to head here to my go-to when I'm reading something. I'm generally doing a digital version of it. I do books as well, but there's no easy way to show you my books. And so let's take a look. I'm actually been kind of working on an article. Did social media really matter? And this is from Mass Communication Society. Now, some of the things that I've done is already picking this article for a lot of reasons for a project, but let's just assume this had gotten assigned to me in the way that I assign articles to you, and let's kind of go through it together and see what are the things that I do that I think are good and useful skills as you're approaching these more difficult readings. Now, the first thing that I'm going to suggest is you'll notice that I even started by talking to you about the title. And that's because authors spend an awful lot of time discussing titles and for academic pieces, trying to make sure that by looking at a title, you can quickly get something related to the main point. So in this case, obviously, we have something going on about social media and its effect. And in this case, we're interested in their use of social media as it relates to the decision making, specifically in 2008. So already, by just pausing here on page 1, I have gained some information about my article. Now you'll notice here that the rest is just other kinds of things. Oops. So let's move forward. And as we move forward, oftentimes you're going to see something like an abstract. Now this particular piece does not have an abstract. I happen to already know the Mass Communication Society doesn't do this. But that would be the first thing I'd want to take a look at. And if I'm not going to take a look at that, I want to look early on to kind of get a bird's eye view for what this is about. So for instance, here right off the bat, this study examined college students' use of online media for political purposes in the 2008 election. Data from a web survey of college students showed significant positive relationships between attention to traditional internet sources and political self-efficacy and situated political involvement. Okay, so we got some big words and concepts going on here, but I can see that there's something positive happening between social media and whatever this self-efficacy and involvement is. And the other thing I'm going to encourage you to do is at this point you might say, okay, let's take a look. Let's grab my highlighter tool, and I might want to highlight something. And my suggestion to you is to put those highlighters away. And I know that sounds crazy, but I mean that quite honestly. Put the highlighter away, and instead, anytime you think that you have found something important, rather than highlighting it, write in the margins or by it the why. So why do I think that's important? Is it the main point? Whatever it is, or maybe it's something that you are genuinely confused about, right? So I use, your what in the world, and you might even want to write why you're confused about it. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to every time you encounter something that you think is important, anytime you feel like picking up that highlighter, set it down, pick up a pen, and in the margin, write why. What is it about this that makes you want to write on it? Once you've done that, as a matter of fact, you'll notice some things going on here. Once you've done that, you're going to make it easier to come back to the beginning. And what I would suggest then is writing down what you think the main point is in a sentence or two. Then come back through that article and see if by going through it once, you have begun to answer any of your questions, to link issues up. And again, write those in the margins. Don't just put them, don't just highlight, don't just underline. And then once you've been through it a few times, take another stab at that main point. And compare. What were you right? Were you wrong? Where were you wrong? Look at those issues, because this is the way you're going to come to a deeper and closer understanding of the text. And this applies to me. This is what I do myself. So when I'm coming and approaching a text, it's not as if having a doctoral degree means that I'm suddenly immune from needing to read deeply and take notes. And I use these very strategies myself. As a matter of fact, as you can see here, some articles I'm working on. So here are some strategies. The other thing to think about when you're doing this reading is to remember that you are having a conversation with somebody at a slightly higher level than you're probably used to. So for instance, if you just pick up a magazine, if you pick up a popular novel, it's going to be written somewhere at the 8th grade level. So below you, it's purposefully below you, because that requires nothing or little to nothing from us to ascertain. But if I come here, let's just even pick look, the purpose of this study is to examine college students' use of online media, namely social media attention and online expression, as well as traditional media attention, in relation to political self-efficacy and situational political involvement in the 2008 election. As political campaigns increasingly make use of these new media, it is important to understand the impact on political communication in the contemporary political environment. And it's going to go on. So already here's some words you might be a little confused about, right? So what's cognition, right? You might be a little bit confused about what is this situational political involvement. So there's all of these terms and concepts as you approach our readings where you might be a little bit confused. And it's not that the author is intending or purposefully confusing you, but rather they're expecting you to learn, to think about, and to ascertain not only from their own, but from this set of articles, what's happening. It's part of a conversation. And so the same thing is going to hold true for the pieces that I'm assigning to you. So let's kind of summarize the big strategies you might want to have. 1. You want to go through and make sure you ditch that highlighter. Write notes anytime you want to underline or highlight. Why? Write down areas where you're confused. Why are you confused? Plow through a work the first time, even if you don't have the answers to all of those questions. Upon finishing the first read, write down what you think that main point, the main thrust of the argument is. Reread the piece, this time looking to come to terms with the piece, seeing if the piece itself has helped you understand the parts that you had confusion about or the notes that you were taking. Once you finished it on the slower read the second time, in which you may want to look up words and have your smartphone ready or your dictionary, you're going to want to come back and write that main point again. See how it compares to what you thought the main point was the first time. By this point, you should feel comfortable enough that you can begin to write a summary. And that's going to force you to synthesize what you've done. And if you take good marginal notes, it's going to be a whole lot easier to write that summary than taking a look at crisp, blank pages that you haven't interacted with yet. So scribble over that book. It's going to make reading a whole lot easier when you approach it this way. And I hope by doing it in this class, as you move into upper level classes, you'll begin to see that you can tackle reading that's beyond the 8th grade and you can enjoy it. It just takes a little bit of a different skill set. I hope this helps you, and as we move forward, I hope this makes those summaries a little bit easier.